Jim, we ran along with just about every single thing we had planned to do and lots of things that just popped right up. Why don't we end with a short edition of Guess the Program to put you in a good mood, to put me in a good mood, and put the audience, more importantly, in a good mood.
To leave the people on an up note.
All right. This one right here. Let me find. Oh, I have the ticket stubs.
I predict I'm gonna win 2 out of 3 here. I predict.
Of course, Guess the Program. I go through programs in my collection. I quiz Jim. He guesses every single detail he can about the town, the building, the location, the wrestlers, and everything else.
We're trying for the year and the town is what we're trying for.
And here I have 2 ticket stubs. Which building are these in? They are here. Okay. The opening contest, Jim. 1 fall, 20-minute time limit. Ramon Torres versus Fred Blassie.
Lord, the opening match?
A tag team encounter. 20 minutes, 1 fall. Enrique Torres and Enrique Romero versus Curtis Iukea and Kit Fox. The next contest, 45 minutes, 2 out of 3 falls. Sandor Szabo.
Good Lord.
Versus the Alaskan. And the main event, 2 out of 3 falls, 2-hour time limit. Lou Thez versus Edouard Carpentier.
Gee, Manelli Shelley. All right. At first, when you mentioned a Torres and a Blassie, I was thinking we were going to be potentially in Georgia. But this, then Enrique Torres, is that Enrique Romero? Is that Ricky Romero?
I would have to look. I don't know. Let me see if there's a picture.
King Curtis and Kit Fox. Sandor Szabo is an old timer, but this would have been toward the end of his career. One would think that Thez and Carpentier, 2 out of 3 falls with a 2-hour time limit. That would be for the NWA title. One would think, is that after I know you can't answer me, but the disputed decision which led to Carpentier and Thez both being recognized for a short period of time was in 1957. With Torres and Blassie in the opening match, this has got to be on, and Sandor Szabo, this got to be on the West Coast.
Well, let me just say opening match as it's listed here. They may have added matches, I don't know.
Well, yeah, but then also you've got King Curtis, who would have to be almost a rookie at this point. And what year did he start? I'm trying to remember. Or could this have been, is everybody taking a vacation to Hawaii? And he was already there. And I don't know who the Alaskan was, but I bet you it wasn't Mike or Jay York. This is either California or Hawaii from 1959.
Impressive. This is San Francisco Wrestling. The Civic Auditorium. I have here ticket stubs for Section F3, Row D, Seats 6 and 7, August 16th, 1960. And on the cover,
missed it by that much.
And this is Referee Magazine. On the cover, Lou Thez versus Edouard Carpentier, Civic Auditorium, San Francisco, Tuesday night. 2 hours, 2 out of 3 falls. International Champ versus NAWA Champ.
So they obscured that a little bit.
A little bit. Let me get another one here. Oh, this one's interesting, I guess. Let's pull this one out. Jim, the opening contest. Randy and Bill Mulkey versus Colt Steele and Jack Hart.
And by the way, Jack Hart was Barry Horowitz.
Eddie Roberts versus Mitch Snow.
Good Lord. Mitch Snow was one of the young guys that was trained by Nelson Royal up in Mooresville, North Carolina.
Brady Boone versus T. Khan.
And Brady Boone, what the fuck? They
Robbinsdale
gave
High
him
School.
but they gave him a gimmick in the WWF for a brief period of time.
Battle Cat.
Battle Cat, that's right. And T. Khan was from Minneapolis also and came down with guys like Warlord and remember Al Blake, Vladimir Pietrov.
The Tahitian Prince versus Dennis Brown.
Denny Brown was the former world junior heavyweight champion when it was a job guy belt, and Dusty liked him and he used him a lot in Florida. The Tahitian Prince, was that Samu? It was one of that generation of Samoans. I can't remember which one.
I'm not sure. Ron Simmons and Scott Hall versus Shaska Watley and Ed the Bull Gantner.
Pez Watley, obviously from Chattanooga, standout amateur, broke in for Goulas and Welch in the mid-70s, was doing the Shaska Watley thing at this period of time, which is going to be 1987. Ed the Bull Gantner had got broke in Florida. He had a football background, didn't last long. Ron Simmons was a rookie at this point, and maybe he'd started in 86. And Scott Hall was still floating around before he was going to be more famous when he became a Cuban. Keep going.
For a tag title I will not name. No disqualification. The Mod Squad, Basher and Spike versus the Southern Boys, Steve Armstrong and Tracy Smothers.
Did the Mod Squad have their manager, JD Costello, with them?
He is not listed here, and here's a picture. No, it appears they may be managed by Bill Dundee.
Aha, yes, as a matter of fact, they were, now that you think about it, because Dundee, well, now that may have been a picture from Kansas City, though, because Dundee was with them when they were in Kansas City. Keep going, and then I'll explain all of this.
For a title I will not name, Mike Rotunda versus Kevin Sullivan. And the main event, Barry Windham versus Big Bubba.
No trouble. This was in Florida, first of all, and it was after that Crockett Promotions had bought Florida Championship Wrestling or Championship Wrestling from Florida, whatever the legal title was. They bought the territory. The Mulkeys were there because Dusty wanted to reward Randy and Bill for those memorable TV matches and their dedication and their determination. And he sent them to a territory. And it's that Colt Steele, another guy, the world's biggest calves, was trained by Nelson Royal up in Mooresville. Barry Horowitz at that time had worked Florida before for Dusty. Mitch Snow and Brady Boone, T.J. Khan, Denny Brown, they were all guys that had worked for Crockett underneath and were getting a chance to be more featured. The Mod Squad was Mac and Jim Jeffers from Greenville, South Carolina, and they were a brother team that did jobs on Crockett's TV, but J.D. Costello had been the goddamn ring announcer in Greenville and wanted to be a wrestling manager and was friends with Mac and Jim and paid to have a video done with them as this gimmick, the Mod Squad, where they were the police brutality thing, and he was their manager in the odd suits. And I called Randy Hales and got him booked in Memphis for a little while at one point, and then they came back home, and Dusty wanted to use the Mod Squad gimmick, so he sent them at one point to Kansas City when they bought that, and then at one point to Florida. And Steve Armstrong and Tracy Smothers, the Southern Boys, they had been in Florida when they bought the territory, and that was the first time we got to work with them on a couple of the Crockett TVs in 87, 3 years before they came into the rest of the territory. And Barry Windham, Mike Rotunda, Kevin Sullivan, Florida names, and Bubba in the main event with Barry, because this was during the period of time Dusty had started Bubba in spring of 86, worked the angle with him and Dusty and Bubba through the bashes in 86 in the summer and the fall. And then as 87 started, they'd bought Kansas City. He wanted to send Bubba to Kansas City for a little while. He sent him to Florida, and then he sent him to the UWF when they bought Watts out and put the UWF belt on him because he was so confident in Bubba. He wanted to make him more than just my bodyguard. He was going to become a top heel. And that's why he was sending him to these different places and putting belts on him, letting him work as a single. Akbar managed him in the UWF, and he was always being pushed in these places, even if he wasn't on the national TV, because the thought was to bring him back to Charlotte and, have him main event Starrcade one day. But things got in the way of that. He got a shitty payoff for Starrcade 87, and Hulk Hogan needed an opponent, and the Big Boss Man was born. But so this was Florida, and I would bet you by the number of matches, even though there wasn't a lot of high-priced talent, this had to be either St. Petersburg at the Bayfront Center, if they were still running that big a building, or Tampa, or potentially Miami Beach. And it was definitely in the later stages or the mid stages, summertime of 1987. How close am I?
You're pretty close. I'll tell you the town because you missed completely on that. Fort Myers, the Lee Civic Center.
Fort Myers. All right.
Friday, April 17th, 1987.
And they were having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 matches in Fort Myers, which wasn't a major market town, but all these guys were cheap and they all needed experience.
Well, let me ask you this, because I have a program. I actually got a bunch of programs from this period of time recently. This is 10 days earlier, April 7th in Tallahassee. Pretty much the same crew, with one big difference. Well, Ric Flair's in the main event against Barry Windham. They spell his name wrong here in the program. But it's the Mod Squad and the Southern Boys for the Florida tag titles, I didn't say before. Rotunda, Florida heavyweight champion versus Ed Gantner. Brady Boone versus Shaska Watley. The Mulkeys versus Eddie Roberts and Mitch Snow. Kevin Sullivan, T-Joe Khan, and the Tahitian Prince, and I think it is Samu, versus Scott Hall, Ron Simmons, and Stan Lane. When did Stan get the call to join the Midnight Express? This is April 7th.
Well, I don't think he made that show.
Oh, okay.
Because, shit, can I reach? Hold on. I'm taking my headset off.
Jim Cornette is taking his headset off. He's walking across the room probably to get that Midnight Express scrapbook.
Putting my headset on. Going to 1987. Trying to find 1987. Because I'm going to say that it was, yes, April 4th at Atlanta TV, and that night in Boston at the Garden was Stan's debut. And then on the 7th, we did TV in Spartanburg, South Carolina. So Stan, but see, those cards would be booked 3 weeks, 4 weeks in advance for the TV advertising. And Dennis didn't disappear until March 25th. So we pretty much, between March 25th and April 4th, looked for Dennis, couldn't find Dennis, determined that Dennis wasn't coming back. Dusty said, we got to do something. I came up with and pitched Tom Pritchard, and Dusty had already said, well, what about Stan Lane? He got him up to the fucking office in Charlotte in time for us to all say yes, and he debuted April 4th. So we were not dicking around.
And obviously you wouldn't have been managing Bubba on the 17th against Wyndham.
So. No, he was down there by himself. On the 17th, I was in Macon, Georgia with the Midnight Express against Ron and Jimmy Garvin. But now, you know what? Having said that, in Athens, Georgia on the 16th, the Midnight, Bubba and myself had an 8-man tag with Wahoo, Wyndham, and Ron and Jimmy Garvin. So, and then he went from Athens to goddamn...
Against Wyndham.
Where was it? Fort Myers. Yeah.
Against Barry Windham. But listen to the schedule. So this is 87, so this is really late for Florida wrestling. April 12th, Orlando. It's a Sunday. Monday, West Palm, April 13th. Tuesday to 14th, Tampa. Wednesday to 15th, Jacksonville. Thursday to 16th, Port Richey at the Southland Roller Palace. Friday, April 17th, Fort Myers. Saturday, April 18th, Lakeland. Back to Orlando, Sunday, April 19th, a week later. Melbourne, April 21st. April 22nd, Wednesday, Miami. April 24th, Friday, Arcadia. And Sarasota on the 25th on a Saturday. So, even though the promotion was dying to the point where Crockett took it over, and, that didn't help it save it or anything, they still had a full schedule of events.
Oh, yeah. Well, in those days, you had those buildings booked months and months in advance. And, when business went down, you were still running the towns. You had to run the towns. You didn't cancel towns in those days because then the regular fans in each. Louisville ran every week for 20-something years at the Louisville Gardens. I don't remember a show ever being canceled except for the ice storm that delayed the Jerry Lawler Coyote Calhoun match for a week. The DJ from Louisville, Coyote, the fucking local people sold the building out. I've told this story, but the wrestlers couldn't get here from Nashville because of the ice. So they brought the same card back the next week. But in all those years, you didn't cancel shows low advance. Don't pay the fucking boys. But you didn't cancel shows otherwise. So up until the end, they ran the schedule that they had to run. And then they just said, well, we can't do this anymore.
All right, Jim, one more program. This has been fun here today. This one, just reading what it says on the cover here. The opener, one fall 15-minute time limit at 8:30 p.m. Jolting Joe Blanchard versus Bronco Lubitsch.
Oh, good Lord.
Preliminary, one fall 20 minutes. George Scott versus Johnny Walker. The semifinal, a terrific six-man tag team match, star-studded teams. This team, Tim Woods, Mr. Wrestling, Thunderbolt Patterson, Joltin' Joe Blanchard, total team weight 746 pounds, versus this team, Bronco Lubitsch, Chris Markoff, Toru Tanaka, total weight 746 pounds. The Europeans' manager, George Harris, will be in charge of this trio. 2 out of 3 falls, 45-minute time limit. The first main event, Kowalski answers Wahoo's challenge and accepts. Indian strap match, Chief Wahoo McDaniel versus Waldek, whatever you want to call it, Killer Kowalski.
Wladek. It's Polish, and yeah, there's a variety of pronunciations.
Both gladiators asked the promoter to make it one fall to a finish and to allow it under brass knuckles rules so everything goes. And the second main event, Coliseum fans in a frenzy demand this match. Let me go back to the cover and read what it says here. Primitive maniacal action on tap tonight. This is definitely a championship match. Rugged Johnny Valentine, Texas champion. Well, I gave that away. Fuck. Rugged Johnny Valentine versus formidable challenger Pepper Gomez. Psychological intervention of ring announcer Florentino Sheldon, who will second Pepper. See story inside program.
Well, we'll see that story in a minute. I know it's Houston already. Okay, so you didn't really give too much away. With Blanchard and Lubitsch it's a Texas gimmick. Blanchard, Lubitsch in a single and then coming back in a 6-man. It's a captain's match. They stretched the card without having to pay extra guys back then. They did the same thing in Dallas. One time, Dennis Condrey, the minimum was $50 and the spot show was the shits, but he worked twice, so he got $63. They gave him a $13 extra payoff for wrestling twice. Like they shaved that fucking right down to the nub. It's as much as we can give you. But Blanchard and Lubitsch, obviously Texas names. Joe would later promote San Antonio and Sire Tully. Bronco was a great guy, became a referee later on. George Scott, brother of Sandy Scott, my least favorite booker ever in history, George Scott. Boy, two brothers couldn't be more different. Well, Bruce and Tom. Johnny Walker would later on be Mr. Wrestling number 2. Tim Woods would be Mr. Wrestling number 1. Thunderbolt Patterson would be Thunderbolt. Chris Markoff and Professor Tanaka. George Harris, George Two-Ton Harris, George Bunk Harris, the baby blimp, was from Tennessee and was a childhood friend of the Welch families and got into business that way and ended up working a ring crew and maintenance for Crockett Promotions in the late 80s. And Killer Kowalski and Wahoo and Johnny Valentine and Pepper Gomez, that's what gave it away. Wahoo, Valentine, and Gomez were huge in Houston. And goddamn, by some of these names, I want to... I just think because of the main events, it would be early 70s, but at the same time, the preliminaries, I might even go 68 or 69. I'll split the difference. Houston, Texas, 1970.
The date, Thursday, February 11th, 1971. Corpus Christi, Texas.
Corpus Christi?
The Sheldon and Emerson's Memorial Coliseum for their weekly wrestling
Son of a
event.
bitch. I thought it was Houston.
20 cents.
Corpus Christi never got fucking cards like this in the 80s. Yeah. Corpus Christi was not one of the major towns at that point in time, except when we did the Clash there and Mascaras drew all the fucking money. Corpus Christi. Well, son of a bitch. Loved the Holiday Inn's room service there by the Holiday Inn in Corpus Christi in the late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s. Wonderful room service right there on the water.
Prices this week: ringside $4, dress circle $3, balcony $2, all children under 10, $1 balcony when accompanied by an adult, admission. And wrestling's on Channel 3, KIII, if that's what this is. Saturday, 10:30 p.m. in color. It is in color. So there we go. That is this.
Now, what was the story on this fucking weird?
Yeah, what it said
situation they had going on?
Psychological intervention of ring announcer Florentino Sheldon, who will second Pepper. Pandemonium to engulf Coliseum as Valentine risks belt opposite fiery Pepper Gomez and Wahoo Tess Kowalski. Let me see specifically about this Florentino. Here we go. It was because of this match that our good friend, ring announcer Florentino Sheldon Jr., became the victim of a pulverizing Johnny Valentine right to the jaw that saw the rotund official catapult to the canvas in agonizing pain. Our good friend, the rotund Sheldon. Sheldon told this writer that all he said to the champion was that the match was over, and that unexpectedly, Johnny approached him, and before he knew it, he felt the impact of what he thought was a cannonball on the side of his face, and the lights seemed to dim, and the whole Coliseum was whirling, and momentarily, his eyes closed in involuntary slumber. It was an experience, he says. Sheldon, who has been a good friend of Gomez for many years, will be Pepper's second in this match. He says that he has seen Valentine so many times that he knows his moves to the letter, and that he will avenge Johnny's brutal attack by signaling Pepper the champ's next move. It is a psychological impulse more than anything else, Sheldon says, and that he strongly believes it will prove effective. We told him we would have a stretcher ready for him just in case, and he gave us a faint smile, very faint. And there it is.
You think Paul Bosch wrote that? He's using a lot of big words.
I don't know. I mean, this is obviously a Houston town. These are Houston wrestlers. I don't know. We'll see what we can find. I have a whole bunch of these from Corpus Christi, so we'll see. Not that I could use them now in this game. So we'll see what we can find out. But there it is. Guess the program. Where is this thing? And with that, the drive-thru is closed. Drama.